It was Dylan's 18th birthday. The candles flickered on top of the cake and the living room echoed with laughter. He closed his hands together, eyes shut, and wished for his grandparents to live a long life, and for his dad to get that big promotion and a fat raise. Then it was my turn. I looked at him, full of hope. He knew my health had been failing for years. But instead of kindness, he shot me a cold glance and said flatly, "I wish you'd finally divorce Dad. The farther away you are from us, the better." I stood there stunned. Frank let out a loud laugh beside him and said, "Well, that's what you get for riding him so hard. Serves you right." A few weeks later, Dylan took them all to Switzerland, left me behind like I was baggage they were done carrying. I tried to stop them. I begged him to listen. He yanked his arm away and snapped, "I've already found Dad someone better. She's sweet and kind. You're not ruining our new life." That winter, I died alone in a tiny rented room. There was no funeral. No one even said my name. But when I opened my eyes again, somehow, impossibly, I was back. It was morning. Dylan's 18th birthday. All over again. By the time the apartment manager found me, the infection had already eaten through the skin on my leg. Maggots had begun to burrow. When the paramedics arrived, I was barely clinging to life. It was the most company I'd had in over a decade. Building management, EMTs, a social worker from the city. A young nurse held up a spoon and gently urged me, "Stay with us, ma'am. We're going to help you, okay?" Someone nearby murmured, "This kind of illness is totally treatable in the early stages. Where's her family? How did no one notice she was gone?" I couldn't speak. All I could do was stare at the ceiling. Then someone pointed at the faded picture frames lining the wall. "Oh my God, isn't that Dylan Ross? That entrepreneur? He grew up in this building." "Yeah. Didn't he move to Switzerland a few years back?" Told reporters his whole family was there with him. He even held up a photo of his mom during the interview. They managed to get in touch with Dylan. I summoned everything I had left just to lift my head, just to see his face again. It had been nearly 20 years. He was a 50-year-old man now, but in my eyes he was still that little boy. With what felt like my final breath, I whispered, "Dylan." He appeared on the screen, frowning, eyes like ice. "You're still alive?" he said, his voice clipped and sharp. Before I could even blink, the call cut out. The volunteer hit redial, this time her voice edged with anger. "Mr. Ross, this woman is on her deathbed. She only wants to see you one last time. The doctors say she doesn't have long. Don't you think you should come say goodbye?" There was a pause, then a flat, lifeless reply. "I feel nothing for her. She's just a stranger to me now. Bury her, cremate her, toss her ashes in the ocean, I don't care. But don't call me again." My eyes filled with tears. Memories flashed through my mind like old film reels. His first steps, his teenage rebellion, his gradual detachment. Then something froze. One frame locked in place. The room went dark. When I opened my eyes again, I saw a reflection in the bathroom mirror. My face. Young. I stared at it for what felt like minutes before it hit me. I had come back. Today was Dylan's 18th birthday. Laughter rang out from the living room. The house was filled with noise, just like that morning from so long ago. In my hands, I was holding the very gift I had sacrificed so much to give him. An admission pass to the St. Elson Elite Winter Camp. It was the kind of place where the children of senators and CEOs went to ski and network. Intelligence got you through the door, but pedigree kept you there. In my last life, that ticket had opened the gate for Dylan to enter the world of the elite. To meet the people who shaped his future as a startup mogul. "Elaine, what are you doing? Dylan's about to make his wish." Frank's voice yanked me out of the fog. I stepped into the room. Just like before. The second I entered, the air shifted. The warmth vanished. Dylan glanced at me, then quickly looked away. He closed his eyes, hands pressed together. "I wish Grandma and Grandpa live forever and Dad gets promoted at work." The grandparents beamed. They handed over their gifts in turn. A new basketball, a pair of limited edition sneakers, a mountain of praise. Dylan kissed each of them on the cheek, his voice syrupy sweet. Then came the candles. Judith, his grandmother, held his hand over the flames. She tilted her head toward me, just enough for Dylan to catch the signal. "Say something to your mother or she's going to make a scene again." So Dylan, clearly annoyed, folded his hands once more and muttered, "I wish you two would just get divorced already. I hope Mom disappears from our lives and never comes back." Word for word. Exactly as it was before. But this time I didn't flinch. No shock. No tears. No trying to please anyone. Frank gave a dry laugh. Well, what did you expect? You were always on his back. Now you get what you deserve. Judith piled on right on cue. Kids grow up. They learn who really loves them. If Dylan had a softer, sweeter mother, he'd be a much better young man. I nodded gently. Well, if that's his birthday wish, then I'll make it happen. I'll give you the divorce. The room went silent, so quiet I could hear the second hand ticking on the wall clock. Then they all laughed in unison. Frank crossed one leg over the other and sneered. That's the first time I've heard you say something sensible. So, we doing this tomorrow? I shook my head. No. I'm busy tomorrow. They roared. Dylan rolled his eyes. Here we go. Always an excuse. Just say it, you can't let go. You're a control freak. My voice was calm. No, what I meant is, it's only 10 in the morning. Why wait? We can see the lawyer this afternoon. Judith's face tightened. Cut the games. Just hand over Dylan's gift and stop making a scene. She yanked the envelope from my hand. Dylan tore it open with a smirk, mumbling, "What is it this time? Another cheap knockoff? God, this is embarrassing." Then the glossy ticket slipped out. His eyes lit up. Wait, this is a ticket to the St. Elson winter camp. I reached out and took it back, my tone flat. Since you've decided I'm not your mother, then you don't get to touch anything that comes from me. The room froze. All the smugness drained from their faces at once. Frank was the first to recover. He jumped up and barked. Are you seriously pulling this crap? He's your son. Who else are you gonna give it to, a stranger? Judith's voice turned sharp, slicing through the air. Or maybe you already have someone on the side. Just like a trashy little girl from the sticks. I knew it. I'd heard worse. 100 times. The old me would have cried. Would have broken. Would have wondered if I had been too harsh, too controlling, too much. But now I just found it laughable. A woman endures decades of humiliation and in the end she gets told she earned it? Why would I keep quiet for that? I looked Frank in the eye and said flatly, enough games. Frank, are you divorcing me or not? Before he could answer, Dylan leapt up, practically snarling. Just divorce her already, Dad. For God's sake, all this drama over a stupid ticket? She thinks she's special? You could get that damn ticket if you wanted. Don't let her hold us hostage. His nostrils flared, face flushed red, veins popping. Like a rabid dog ready to snap. I'd seen this scene too many times. In his eyes, I was always the one who didn't belong. His father was a business exec. His grandparents were retired professors. Me. Just a nobody from some backwater town. An embarrassment. They were the family he showed off. I was the shameful burden. The placeholder. The woman he wished never existed. For years I believed that once he grew up he'd see me. He'd understand. So I gave everything I had so he could fly. And in return I died alone in a roach-infested rental apartment. He didn't even take a single photo of me with him. This time I didn't argue. I just smirked and nodded. Of course. You're so well connected, a camp ticket should be nothing for you guys. Their expressions twisted. No more words. I took a deep breath, calm as stone. After the divorce I want half of everything. You can keep the kid. I'll pack my bags and once we're done at the attorney's I'm gone. I turned and walked into the bedroom, rolled out 2 large suitcases. Outside the door Dylan was still raging. Judith clung to him, whispering desperately. Don't be upset, sweetheart. She's wicked. She'll get what's coming. She needs you, baby. She needs you to survive. She can't live without you. Dylan screamed. She's not my mom. The day she dies, that's when life finally gets clean. The words pierced me like needles. But I didn't cry. I didn't even blink. I stood at the door. Frank looked smug, lips curled into a twisted grin. Wow. You're really doing it? Fine. Let's go. I pulled out our marriage certificate and said ice cold. Let's. His smirk faltered. All right, but if you want a divorce you leave with nothing. Not a dime. I laughed in his face. Oh. So you don't want me to leave? This was all bait. Testing me, huh? He scoffed, brow raised. Please. You think I care? Where would you even go? You want half? Fine. Take it. Let's see how long you last. Then I understood why he'd been so smug. At the law office it all came out. Frank had already moved nearly all our joint assets into his parents' names. Even the house we lived in. Legally, it belonged to Harold and Judith. Half of everything turned out to be a few $1,000s in joint checking. Just under $5,000. He signed the divorce papers without hesitation. I stared at the paperwork, too numb to fight anymore. I signed. He leaned back, lips curling. That's it? One tantrum and you gave up the whole marriage? You think you're free? You just lost, Elaine. Can't wait to see you crawl back to Dylan. He stared, waiting for me to beg. To weep. To break. I'd seen this performance before. Every time I tried to leave, he'd shove Dylan in front of me like a shield. And every time I stayed. For my son. But this time was different. I stood up, planted one foot and kicked Frank hard in the knee. Then I turned around and walked away. He stumbled, cursing under his breath. Crazy bitch. I didn't say a word. Just walked home to grab my bags. But the second I stepped through the door, something was off. The air felt wrong. And I knew I wasn't done yet. Harold and Judith were whispering to Dylan, nudging him forward like handlers pushing a prizefighter into the ring. Then Dylan strutted toward me, posture cocky, face twisted with spite. Give me the ticket, he said coolly, and I'll pretend that little meltdown of yours didn't happen. Maybe I'll even let you keep the title of mom, for now. I smiled and shook my head. Don't bother pretending. Works out better for both of us. His smugness cracked and he looked like he was about to explode. Judith stepped in, tugging his arm, her voice suddenly gentle. Elaine, come on now. Don't do this. You know how hard he's worked for this chance. If he misses this winter camp, he's stuck going to some local state school. You know what that means for his future. I raised a brow. Really? That bad? But I thought you all were so well connected. Frank's so successful and you and Harold know just about everyone. Should be a breeze for you to get another camp ticket, right? Their faces tensed in unison. Frank's voice shot out like a whip. Of course we could get another one. We're just busy. Too busy for this kind of paperwork and nonsense. You don't give him the ticket, people will say we're cold-hearted. 4 pairs of eyes zeroed in on the slip of glossy cardstock in my hand. I looked at Dylan. There was still that same defiant gleam in his eye. The same stubbornness. And despite everything, my heart softened. Fine. One last time. I handed over the prized St. Elson winter camp ticket. Take it, I said quietly. From this moment forward, we're even. He snatched the ticket like a thief grabbing free money. Scoffed. Save the drama. Now get in the kitchen. I want blueberry pie. And if you say no, I will make sure Dad files those papers. He'd always loved my pies. Especially blueberry. I didn't answer. I turned and walked into the bedroom, grabbed my 2 packed suitcases and wheeled them out. No one tried to stop me. Behind me, Judith's voice rang out in a hiss. She'll be back crying before nightfall. This time don't be so quick to forgive. Dylan added with a cruel laugh. Dad, get one of those spiked doormats ready. Make her kneel and beg for forgiveness. They were all laughing like they'd just closed a big deal. I smiled to myself. And silently whispered, don't be afraid, Elaine. The suffering is almost over. My parents had passed away long ago. And after walking out on Frank, I had nowhere to go. Just then Greg Hughes, my neighbor across the hall, happened to be looking for a tenant. I rented his spare room. In return, I offered to tutor his daughter, Natalie, for her SATs. Rent dropped to 1/3 of the original price. Natalie wasn't a genius, but she was earnest. If I repeated things twice, she got it. After just a week, Greg beamed as he told me Natalie's scores had already improved. That night he invited me over for dinner, to celebrate. I just stepped out into the hallway when I ran straight into Frank and Dylan. They were coming out of Greg's apartment. Frank's face twisted in mock surprise. Well, look who it is. Done playing the martyr? Regretting walking out, huh? The hell are you still doing here? Before I could speak, Greg stepped in. Elaine's been tutoring my daughter. She's been amazing. Frank let out a harsh, sarcastic laugh. Oh, that explains it. I was wondering how you managed to land in this building. And you're wasting money on her? Seriously? She's a country bumpkin. What's she gonna teach anyone? Dylan looked Natalie up and down, then sneered. Dumb stays dumb. Even with a tutor. Some people are just born useless. Natalie flushed deep red. Her voice shook, but she didn't back down. Oh my God, she's your mother, Dylan. How can you say that? She's the one who got you into that fancy winter camp. You think you're going because you're some genius? Get over yourself. Dylan crossed his arms, chin tilted high. You questioning me? Ever heard of St. Elson Winter Camp? I'm going. That place is for the best. You'll never make it past the door. His eyes sliced toward me like knives. Dad, get her out of this building. People like her don't deserve to share a zip code with us. Greg and Natalie were flushed with fury, about to speak up in my defense. But I raised a hand and gently shook my head. Not worth it. Besides, it wouldn't be long before they'd have nothing to laugh about. 2 weeks later, final exams wrapped up. Natalie shot from the bottom of her class to 8th place. Greg was over the moon. He treated me to a full steak dinner, beaming with pride the whole time. Afterward, the three of us caught a light-hearted movie together and laughed the whole walk home. But as soon as we stepped into the courtyard of the complex, there they were. Frank, Judith, and Dylan, frozen like statues outside my door. Dylan stood rigid, luggage in hand, face dark like a brewing storm. He stormed up to me, voice trembling with rage. Elaine, why did the winter camp tell me the ticket was invalid? I shrugged, voice light, almost cheerful. Oh, that's because I sold the real one. The ticket you had? Just a souvenir card. That ticket had been a golden key. And I'd sold it for a cool 20 grand. Their faces blanked in collective shock. Mouths open. No words. Frank was the first to recover. He laughed in disbelief. You've lost your damn mind. That's your son. You'd let him humiliate himself in front of his peers. Dylan's eyes were bloodshot. His fists clenched so tight I could hear his knuckles crack. He looked ready to swing. But I didn't flinch. I simply said, relax. There's another group leaving for the camp next week. With the great Ross family's connections, scoring a new ticket should be easy, right? They exchanged glances, just long enough to show a flash of doubt. Dylan exploded, spittle flying. That's right. We don't need you. Without you we'll be just fine. Better even. Judith tried to calm him while throwing daggers my way. Don't get worked up, baby. She's just being petty. Bring her home. We'll make her get another ticket. But Dylan shook her off, sneering. No need. She's never seen real society. She was never good enough to be my mom. Then he turned to Frank like a CEO giving orders. 3 days. That's all you get. Get me a new ticket and prove to her we don't need her for anything. What they didn't know was, that ticket had taken me a year and a half to secure. For 18 months I worked every humiliating job you could imagine. By day I scrubbed floors as a cleaner. By night I served as a personal assistant to a rotating roster of upper-crust wives. Fetching almond milk lattes, massaging their feet, babysitting their dogs, even warming their bathtubs. One of them used to call me at 3 a.m. just so I could sit beside her while she spiraled through her insomnia. Another had me perform weekly foot treatments. For 8 months straight. Every time I felt like breaking I closed my eyes and pictured Dylan, standing tall, confident, proud. I told myself it would all be worth it. Then 2 weeks ago I sent an anonymous letter to a few of those women, gently reminding them that if they didn't help me get the ticket, I'd forward records of their special service demands straight to their husbands' law firms. And those husbands, bank CEOs, tech executives, men with reputations they couldn't afford to stain. The women delivered. Eventually. But not without their own brand of punishment. They made me kneel for 2 hours on the edge of their private frozen lake, until my knees were raw and swollen. 3 days later I still couldn't walk without pain. But it had all felt worth it. Because I knew without a doubt that I would never do it again. That kind of ticket? I wasn't about to waste a second one on Dylan. Not after everything. This time I was just having a little fun. I turned to Frank with a bright smile. Come on, aren't you the backbone of this family? Should be a piece of cake for someone like you. Right. As soon as the words left my mouth, Frank's face tightened. His fists clenched, then loosened. He muttered something under his breath and tugged me into the stairwell. Once the door closed behind us and he was sure no one else could hear, his tone softened, fake syrup dripping from every word. Elaine, listen. I know someone must have gotten in your head. You're not really this heartless. You're his mother. He's your son. You can't honestly let him miss out on this opportunity. As he spoke, he pulled a voucher out of his coat pocket. You've been complaining about your back, right? Here. Go get a massage. I blinked. Then I laughed. Frank Ross, how generous of you. After 2 decades of being your unpaid maid, you're offering me a massage coupon? Well, am I finally worthy now? Do I qualify? A flicker of anger flashed in his eyes. His knuckles went white, but he forced a smile back onto his face and turned on the charm. If Dylan gets into that camp, I'll take you to Hawaii. Couple of days on the beach. Our long overdue honeymoon. Remember how you used to nag me about never having one? I'm making it right. He said it like he was gifting something grand to a toddler. Like I was supposed to beam and thank him for his overwhelming generosity. I stared at him stone cold. And all I could think was this. You only got away with it because I let you. You told me only you could take care of this family, so I believed you. I cooked breakfast at dawn, did laundry at midnight, even wrote half your damn presentations. You'd say you were tired and I'd rub your shoulders. But when I was the one stuck in a storm soaked to the skin, you never showed up. If I came home late, I got a lecture about being a bad mother. I snapped back to the present and kept my gaze on him, silent. He shifted, uneasy voice rising. I'm already groveling, Elaine. What more do you want from me? Don't be so greedy. Just then the stairwell door creaked open. Judith rushed in. She shoved Frank aside and clutched my shirt like it was a lifeline. Tears streamed down her face, her voice trembling and so low it scraped the floor. Elaine, I've always thought of you like a daughter. Yes, my words were harsh, my heart too hard. I said things I shouldn't have. But I only meant well. You've been more of a child to me than Frank ever was. I spoiled Dylan because he's your son, because I love you too. She looked up at me, mascara running like black rivers down her cheeks. I know you're hurt. I'm sorry. Truly. Just, please, give Dylan another chance. Give him the ticket. Please. Frank stood dumbfounded. A beat later, he lunged forward to pull her off me. Are you insane? She's not worth begging. You think she deserves your apology? Judith didn't miss a beat. Her hand shot across his cheek, sharp and loud. Shut up, you heartless bastard. I stared at her performance. Almost wanted to clap. The humility. The tears. The precise emotional beats. Judith Ross, master of manipulation. She knew I was soft. She knew a little tenderness would unravel me. Every time I got upset, she'd come the next day with chocolate and sweet words. And just like that, I'd end up being her free babysitter, housekeeper, and confidant. But not this time. My voice was flat. How many times did you two say I was raising him wrong? I'd tell him to do his homework. You'd rip up his assignments behind my back. I'd try to cut down his junk food. You'd sneak entire boxes of candy under his bed. I tried limiting screen time, and you rewarded him with every new game console on the market. You let him stay up all night playing. Then when his eyesight deteriorated, you blamed me for being a bad mother. I paused. Dylan believed you. So much so that one night, while I was asleep, he poured laundry detergent into my eyes. Said he wanted me to know what pain feels like. I once took in a stray cat, I said. When I got sick, it brought food to my bedside. And my own son, the one I raised for 18 years. All he did was look at me half dead and ask, "Why aren't you dead yet?" I had never said those words out loud before. That day was the first time. Frank and Judith exchanged a glance. And for once they saw it. This wasn't me being dramatic. This wasn't a tantrum. This was goodbye. Judith opened her mouth, struggling for a rebuttal. But he's your son. I let out a soft laugh. And, if a piece of meat starts to rot, you throw it out. Otherwise, it poisons the whole body. Frank snapped back like a cornered dog. You remember what you said today because you'll never see him again. Don't come crying when you regret it. His eyes were wild with the desperate gleam of a gambler betting everything on my collapse. I chuckled. Please do mean it this time. I beg you, don't come crawling back with him ever again. His face turned red, lips trembling. You think I can't get him a ticket? I just didn't feel like it. I shrugged, not even bothering to reply. I turned and walked away. Dylan was sitting by the door, his chin tilted up, smug as if he expected me to walk over and beg for forgiveness. Instead, I walked right past him without so much as a glance. He flushed scarlet and started screaming obscenities behind me. I didn't look back. I went inside, locked the door, took off my makeup, put on a face mask, turned on a comedy, and relaxed like I was on vacation. 3 days later, shouting erupted downstairs. Even through the walls, I could hear Frank's voice, hoarse from rage. Word was he'd paid $30,000 for a backdoor ticket from a scalper. It was a fake. The final roster for the St. Elson winter camp had been published. Dylan's name wasn't on it. He wasn't going. Period. For the first time in his life, Dylan didn't get what he wanted. His whole life he'd never heard the word no. His grandparents gave him everything small and I gave him everything big. Even when he begged for a $2,000 summer program, I pulled strings, wrote essays, made phone calls, did it all. But not this time. This time he had waited a year, dreamt about St. Elson, bragged about it, and now he wouldn't even see the front gate. The emotional crash hit him like a freight train. He trashed his room, smashed doors, ripped up photos, howled so loud it woke the entire neighborhood. He climbed onto the balcony and screamed that he'd jump. Neighbors came pouring out in bathrobes, yelling, panicking. The whole street turned into chaos. Then came the knock on my door. It was the police. The lead officer frowned at me. "Are you his mother? Why didn't you intervene earlier? The kid's having a breakdown." Before I could answer, I heard it, Judith crying on cue at the other end of the hallway. That trembling voice she used like a violin, always playing the same pitiful tune. Painting herself the victim. Painting me the villain. Frank slouched at my door, unshaven, shirt wrinkled like it had been pulled from a dumpster. His face was twisted with spite. "Take a good look, officer. This is my wife. A woman who doesn't care for her son, doesn't care for her family. Always with the drama, always threatening divorce." I didn't bother responding. Instead I pulled out my phone. One tap. And the birthday recording played. Dylan's voice came out crisp and clear. "I wish my parents would get divorced. I want my mom gone from our lives. Forever." Then came Frank, his jeers, the mockery, the sneering remarks. Judith laughing. Each cruel sentence echoed through the quiet stairwell like slaps to the face. No filter. No excuses. Judith's sobbing stopped mid-breath. Her face froze, hard and pale like a statue cracking from within. The officer hadn't even spoken yet when the neighbors began chiming in. I knew something was off. Elaine's always been the most devoted one in that household. If she backed off, it had to be because things at home were rotten. If Dylan ever had a shot at the Ivy Leagues, it's because she tutored him day and night. And now what? They turn on her like she's disposable. She put up with everything for years and they still treated her like dirt. I would have left way sooner. Cleaning up after those people? No thanks. I remember that argument a few weeks ago. His whole family screamed at her. "Good riddance, don't come back." What now? Convenient amnesia. And Frank? Always bragging about how useless Elaine was. Now look at him, can't even land a winter camp ticket without her. Their words hit like lit matches tossed onto dry grass. Frank's face darkened until it looked like it had been carved from stone. Dylan had disappeared. No one had seen him since the incident. Not a whisper, not a trace. The police officer seemed to get the picture. He gave a few standard warnings, then left without pressing further. That night I closed the door and ran myself a hot bath. Just as I was changing out of my robe, my phone lit up with a text from Dylan. "Don't get too comfortable. I don't need you to succeed. I'll make it without you. You'll never see me crawl." I stared at it for a moment, then calmly hit delete. A small smile curled on my lips as I turned back toward the kitchen and poured myself a glass of red tea. My life, I thought, is just beginning. After that night, Dylan kept his head down for once. The tantrums stopped. The arrogance dimmed. It was the first time in his life he'd lost something he couldn't buy or bully his way into. And when the divorce papers were finally in my hands, that knot I'd carried in my chest for 20 years, it unraveled, clean and simple. I smiled. Not politely. Not bitterly. But freely. Seeing the grin on my face made the Ross men go dark with rage. Frank stomped his foot like a spoiled child. "I'm going to find a younger girlfriend. You'll regret this." I shrugged. "Go ahead. Knock yourself out." That earned a burst of laughter from the people standing nearby. Frank turned red and scurried off like a kicked raccoon. 10 minutes later he texted me. "Just wait. You'll regret leaving me. A woman your age. No one's going to want you. Get ready to rot alone." I didn't even read it twice. Walked. After that, I threw myself into tutoring Natalie. She was thriving, focused, steady, quietly determined. It was crunch time for the SATs and I didn't dare let my guard down. Greg was incredibly supportive. Every night he prepared thoughtful meals for us so I could devote my energy to studying with Natalie. Even on weekends she insisted on joining me at the park for mock essay drills. That morning we had just finished a full SAT reading section and were strolling back home, papers in hand. As we turned the corner we ran into Judith. She was lugging 2 oversized grocery bags, puffing under the weight. Her hair was a mess, her blouse wrinkled, her hands stained with vegetable juice. This was a woman who never lifted a finger in her life. Before the wedding she paid housekeepers. After the wedding she had me. No servants. No Elaine. And in just a few short months she looked 10 years older. She gave me a look from across the street, half disgusted, half defensive, and huffed. "Look at you. Acting so high and mighty. Playing coach for someone else's kid, but you can't spare a glance at your own son? You'll rot in hell." Natalie froze, furious, ready to fire back. I reached over and gently took her hand. "Don't," I said softly. She bit her lip, then nodded, keeping her composure. Judith, seeing we weren't biting, only got more wound up. "Dylan's thriving now, you know that? Studying at 3 a.m., preparing for interviews. And that little girl you're tutoring." She snorted. "She thinks she can beat my grandson? Keep dreaming." Judith kept shouting as she disappeared into the stairwell, dragging her bags and her bitterness behind her. As we passed their door, I heard Dylan's voice erupt from inside. "What? Natalie's in that mock debate too? No way she can win, she used to be dead last." I smiled. He forgot. He used to stutter through every sentence, couldn't even scrape together 300 words for an essay. And I was the one who sat with him for 6 months, breaking down writing, public speaking, and critical thinking, until he found his voice. Natalie? She started higher. And she worked harder. Word had gotten around the neighborhood. People were whispering, placing bets over dinner. Would Natalie pull off the upset? Or would Dylan hold his ground as the longtime academic champ? Most still bet on Dylan. He had the history. The reputation. Natalie was the underdog, rising fast but unproven. I told her just one thing. Don't worry about their race. Just take your own step. Then the next. Then the next. The days flew by. And just like that, it was 2 nights before the mock competition. Natalie was so nervous she couldn't sleep. I stayed on the phone telling her bedtime stories to calm her down. I told her about growing up in the Midwest back when books were falling apart and chalkboards were cracked. But we were happy, I said. After school we'd chase dragonflies through the cornfields, draw hopscotch squares in the dirt. My mom's pie was always my favorite. Her breathing slowed. I knew she'd fallen asleep. I hung up, set my phone down, and headed to the bathroom to wash up. That's when the pounding on my front door began. Frank's voice, panicked and rasping. "Elaine, open the door. Dylan's in pain, says his stomach's killing him, but he refuses to go to the hospital. You've got to talk to him." I opened the door to find Dylan slumped on my front steps, pale and shaken. When he saw me he jumped up, nervous hands raking through his hair. I frowned. "What are you doing here?" His lips trembled. Then suddenly he dropped to his knees. "Mom, I messed up." He wrapped his arms around my legs, sobbing uncontrollably. Tears, snot, the whole spectacle. "Please don't leave. I was wrong, I should never have treated you that way. I'm sorry. Please come back." I stood frozen. The sun who had once sneered at me like I was dirt, was now clinging to my knees in the middle of the night. I tried to pull away. "Let go. We don't have a relationship anymore." He shook his head like a child. "You're my mom. You can't just give up on me." I bombed the test, I was tired, I panicked. I couldn't tell anyone. "I don't know what to do anymore. Please just tell me what to do." "Well, listen. I'll do whatever you say. I swear I'll never call you embarrassing again. I'll never take you for granted. I miss you, Mom." But my heart didn't budge. I looked down at him and said what I never imagined I'd say out loud. "I don't know if you're being sincere or just putting on another show. But I do know one thing. I'm no longer interested in being your mother." He refused to move. He followed me down the hallway, trailed me to my building. And he stayed there. All night. But the next morning I was gone. I moved. I changed my number. And I started over in a new city. My city. For the first time my life was mine. The only news I heard about him came secondhand, through a few old neighbors who still texted me now and then. They said he'd gone back to my hometown, convinced I'd be there. But the house I was raised in. Long empty. The whole street abandoned. He waited for weeks. Eventually he left, beaten and alone. Some said he only returned when he found out Frank had moved in a new girlfriend. A younger woman half his age. And that, finally, had been enough to bring him crawling back. For a while Dylan and Frank fought almost every day. Dylan would lose it, smashing chairs, flipping tables, turning the house into a war zone. And Frank? He went through 3 girlfriends in 6 months. Dylan ran each one off with his constant tantrums. Eventually, Dylan tried retaking the college entrance exams the following year. He did even worse. With no other options, he enrolled in a forgettable community college down the street. Word got around that his grandparents couldn't bear to see him struggle. They quietly emptied their life savings and paid for him to study abroad. To do it, they even sold their old house behind Frank's back. When Frank found out, he lost it. Smashed a major client's contract right there in his office. By the next morning, he'd been demoted from sales manager to field rep. When I heard the story, I just said quietly, well, sounds like karma. Years passed. I got remarried. My husband, a retired architect, was kind and calm. We lived simply, happily. One summer we took our daughter on vacation to Miami. Stopped at a charming retro French bistro for dinner. The food had just been served when I heard a familiar voice. "Your duck confit, ma'am." I looked up. He froze. Standing there, stiff as stone, tray still in hand. He glanced at me, then at my daughter, who was smiling and asking about the wine list. His face drained of color. Without a word, he turned and fled into the kitchen, like someone had ripped the air out of his lungs. My daughter looked at me, puzzled. "Mom, do you know him?" I smiled gently and shook my head. "I do. But he's just someone who passed through my life." That night, back at the hotel, I stood on the balcony and watched the lights glitter over the ocean. The breeze was soft, like it had come to lift every heavy thing off my chest that I had carried for 2 long decades. I didn't think about Dylan. I didn't think about Frank. I thought about what Natalie told me the night before her college entrance exam. "You're not a failed mom. You just made the decision to choose yourself, maybe a little late. But here's the truth. There's no such thing as too late. The moment you choose to begin again is the right time." Later, we rented a seaside cottage in Key West. We planted flowers, basked in the sun, adopted a stray cat. I started writing again. A book about how a middle-aged woman can rebuild her life when everything has fallen apart. Sometimes I'd speak on podcasts too, sharing my story with other women over 50 who were drained, dismissed, and done being the family doormat. I'd tell them, you don't have to stay just because you're needed. You have the right to leave, and go be cherished instead. So if you're there now, in the dark, on the edge, mocked, doubted, used up, worn thin, let me say this to you. You are not the failure they claim you are. You are simply, finally, living for yourself.